Hello, my name's Tamsin Caine and I'm delighted to welcome today the very lovely Susan Lee. Hi Susan, how are you doing?
I'm great, thanks, Tamsin. Thank you for asking me on.
My pleasure. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Susan today about what happens when you first separate, what you should do, where you should go, who you should talk to, and some of the emotions that you will be feeling at this stage. So whether you've made the decision to separate or whether it's been something that your spouse or partner has decided to do, we're going to cover all of those angles. So Susan, start off by telling us a little bit about why I'm talking to you. So what does your work involve?
Well, I'm a counselor and a hypnotherapist, and I work with people in various stages of breaking up, various stages of turmoil within their relationships. So particularly when we've been through a global pandemic, it's heightened an awful lot of stress for many people and thrown an awful lot of things into focus. So people could be going through a whole myriad of emotions. There's an awful lot of uncertainty around. Relationships have been put under the spotlight, particularly during this last 12-18 months. Children may be at home, financial worries. There's an awful lot going on, and we're maybe looking at each other and realizing that we've changed, they've changed, we perhaps have changed our priorities. And even anyway, before the pandemic, you'd find that people's situation would be changing and evolving as they meet somebody, fall in love, get together. Then over time, perhaps their priorities change as their career focus may become more strengthened, or they have children, or they have elderly relatives who have become unwell. Can be an awful lot of different things going on, uncertainties and stresses that impact on people's relationship and how they feel about a relationship they're in. So I help people at different stages of those dilemmas, of those upheaval situations, and work a lot with stress, confidence, positivity, bad habit patterns, whatever it might be that we want to change, and help people focus and become stronger and more resilient, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if I was sitting here today and I have just either decided to separate from my partner or they've told me that they feel that it's the end of the road, what are the feelings that I'm going to be having right now?
I think it very much depends on which side of the fence you're on, because some people I work a lot with couples who want to get back together and want to relationship counsel the way into healing their situation. And I work sometimes with people who thought their relationship was okay, good enough, fine, and get confronted by a partner who says, I can't do this anymore, I've had enough. And they're perhaps both guilty, if you like, if you want to call it that, but they're both perhaps party to the relationship evolving the way that it did. And so if you're the guy who is precipitating a breakup and saying, I can't do this anymore, you might be feeling shame, you might be feeling guilt, you might be feeling a failure, even if you're the person who is saying, I can't do this anymore. People think that they often look at that person and say, you must be the strong one, you're so harsh and cruel and you're hurting me. But actually, in truth, that person who is saying the relationship's come to an end is often very sad too. And they are breaking up perhaps a family, they're certainly breaking up a home, they're certainly breaking up a relationship. And so it can be very difficult for them. But on the receiving end, often up to that point, there can have been an awful lot of things happening in the relationship that have been difficult, because nobody wakes up one morning and says, that's it, I've had enough. Over time, there may have been disagreements, there may have been boredom, there may have been not finding each other attractive, there may have been nitpicking, there may be confidence bitching at each other and undermining each other. And there can be an awful lot of negative stuff that eats away at us if we're the person who's been confronted with this. So we're already in perhaps a very low, battered and bruised place by the time we hear those words.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems to be that fear plays a big part as well, in terms of fear of the future, and of where you're going to live, what you're going to live on, how the money's going to work, what's going to happen to the children. How can So we've talked about guilt and shame and feelings of failure, and we've talked about fear. How can people start to deal with these emotions? Are there things that they can do themselves?
I think your stepping stones are to find yourself an ally. That might be a friend, it might be a family member, it might be a minister of some kind. But I think that bearing in mind that advice comes from people who already have their own viewpoints. So yes, it's great to have a confidant, somebody who you talk with and offload on and share your bad days and, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel, good days, but also be very mindful that people who give you advice have their own viewpoints about their own situation in life, and that's what they're referencing on. And they may have their own views about what they actually want you to do. Family members might want you to stay local, or they might want you to move away and get out of their hair, you know. So it can be a very torturous thing that they're going through, and they're giving you advice. So yeah, find a confidant, somebody who you can share with so you don't feel so alone. That's important. I think another thing is the stepping stones to financial independence. Some people who perhaps haven't worked for a while may find that they are very afraid of losing their lifestyle, or of losing their support network, or of actually being on their own, and it can be quite daunting. Even simple things like, how am I going to fit a plug on my hairdryer, or how am I going to get the car sorted when it needs a service? All those things can be the unquantifiables that we have no experience of, because in most relationships everybody has his or her jobs, and the fact of tackling an awful lot of new life, new beginnings, can be scary. So maybe start by thinking about, what do I want to do? No pressure, take your time. I mean, I often advise, if that's a word, I often advise people perhaps don't make any hasty decisions within the first 12 months. So maybe if you're having to leave the family home, maybe do a house share with a friend rather than rent somewhere, or whatever. If you're able to do that, perhaps go and share with somebody, so you're not on your own, your overheads perhaps aren't quite as high as they could be, and you're actually buying yourself a bit of time and support to actually heal a bit and come to terms with what you initially want. Because those first feelings of scary, maybe panic, maybe upset, maybe trauma, all those things need a little bit of time to settle down before we make any decisions about where we're going to live, what we're going to do, how we're going to find our money. All those things take a bit of time, and but start getting yourself a little bit more secure financially if you possibly can do that, and start thinking about, do I want training, do I want to work, do I want a little bit of a part-time job initially just so I feel good about myself, or you know, or if you're the person, the major breadwinner, maybe, how am I going to source this, how am I going to fund this, again, what do I want to do with this too?
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. And I think you're absolutely right, that financial independence piece, that you are going to need to do something for yourself if you're not the person who's worked previously. Quite often, um, in the past, my understanding is that if you ended up in court, judges would put a lifetime maintenance order in place, so that you were receiving money for evermore, essentially. And now they're really loath to do that. Now they seem to be more inclined for short-term maintenance, essentially. Have a couple of years breathing space to get yourself on your feet, but you will be expected to work and to financially support yourself. So taking some time to think about what you might want to do and so on, I think is a really good idea. um, and you mentioned about making decisions in that kind of first fling of panic, and I think it tends to be the case that a lot of people, the first thing they do is race off to go and see a lawyer and find out what situation they might be in. um, and my feeling's always been that getting your emotions sorted out and getting some emotional support is a better way than racing off and trying to make decisions. Do you feel that the decisions are better made from a place of emotional stability?
Absolutely, because there's two words that apply here. One is react, and one is respond. If we react, you know, the thing is, let's use an example. My car breaks down on the motorway, and I can react by going, oh my God, my car's broken down. What am I going to do? Kick it, scream, shout, cry, get in a very distressed state. Or I can respond and say, my car's broken down. Right, was I going someplace? Do I need to phone them and tell them I'm going to be late? Am I a member of a motoring organisation? Does my car need to move to safety? That's a responding thing. And we are keeping more of our power. We're keeping more of our control and our calm if we choose the second option. So yeah, we can expend a lot of energy rushing around and making hasty decisions. I'll show him or her, I'll prove that I'm independent, I'll prove I can cope, I don't need anybody. But you know, the phrase cutting your nose off to spite your face, you can end up wasting a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of emotional energy, and have a lot of sleepless nights by being incredibly reactive to a situation. It's far better to just take a little bit of time, even if it takes a bit longer, to think about, you know, is this a good time to get, you know, what do I need to do in terms of earning? What do I need to do in terms of training? What about children, if there are children involved? Is there some help around? What about grandparents, in-laws? Can they be involved in some way? Finding ways to suss out what it is. You know, are you keeping your friends, or are they taking sides? Are you losing some of your friendship group? All that sort of thing. Check out what is actually suitable for you and how you feel and what your support network is. So whether it's, I mean, this often happens after bereavement as well, when somebody gets widowed, or even after redundancy, where somebody loses their lifestyle, and that whole thing about just taking a little bit of time to heal, to calm, to check it out. If you know, that this can be a bit of a luxury if you're needing to make some decisions quickly, but at the same time, thinking about yourself, because this is a brand new start and it's a shame to waste it. In some ways, we can look at this as an opportunity to do things that I never expected to do, but I'm here, this is where it is. Maybe I can't do anything about it, so let me just work with what I've got and learn to use this time to make some really good, positive decisions for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of it being an opportunity. I always think of it as as the start of a new chapter. You know, once you've come through the other side and healed, you're starting off in a new chapter in your new life, and the opportunity to design it in the way that you want to live it. I was going to ask you something then, and it's completely gone out of my head. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So we recorded some of our podcasts as real life divorce stories. So we interviewed some people who've been through divorce. And interestingly, the people who felt that they'd come through it best and most straightforwardly were the people who'd been getting some form of emotional help or support, whether it be a therapist or a psychologist or a counsellor like yourself, or some sort of professional emotional support, as opposed to just friends or family. How do you think you speaking to a professional can help in those circumstances?
Well, I think for a start, the whole thing about making a commitment to go and see somebody professionally and actually pay designates it with asterisks on either side as important me time, where I'm going to specifically deal with this. So I'm not, yeah, it's great to pop round to your mates for a cup of tea or a glass of wine or something, but when you're working with a professional, you are actually designating time for this specific purpose, and you are going to see them, and you are paying money to do that. So that in itself sets out the agenda as being important and specific for you. I think the other thing is that a professional is, I mean, certainly the way I work is very much looking at patterns. You know, what do you want to learn from this experience? Now, you may feel when you turn up at my door, hard done by, the victim, it's not fair, why me, you know, here I go again. There can be a lot of narrative going on there. But for me, it's very much about helping my clients to drill down and to see what's going on here. Is this a pattern? Has this happened before? It may not have done. It may be completely out of the blue. But even if it is out of the blue, what is it about you that missed the warning signs? What is it about you where this somehow has gone on, and what is it that you've not picked up on or not noticed, or what, in other words, what can you learn from this and not repeat this? in any future relationships, in any future situations that you have, because often we do repeat patterns in life. And often it is a great opportunity to say, whatever this story, I mean, a lot of my clients say to me, I don't want to repeat this ever again. This situation, this way I've behaved, this way I've given permission at some tacit, unknown level, given permission for this situation to occur. And so in there, we are owning our responsibility for our lives. We're owning our own responsibility for our happiness, and owning our responsibility for future choices that we make. And those things in themselves are incredibly positive ways to heal and recover and feel more in control of your life and your choices as a consequence as you move forward.
I think that sounds hard to hear. You know, when you're thinking, oh, I might be in the wrong, you know, but some of it is about kind of recognizing your own behavior and so on. And I really feel one of the ladies on the Real podcast, Beth, had said she hadn't dealt with all of that at the time she was going through divorce, and that then had then got to a point where she had to go and deal with it. And you know yourself, because I work with you, that I had exactly the same situation. You know, I hadn't dealt with it at the time, and there were loads of triggers involved, but I'm sure that if I'd have been put on the straight and narrow by you while I was going through it, that I wouldn't have needed to then go and get help later. So it's I really think it's massively important to get that professional support, that professional help. And also, it is, like you said, it's time for you to be able to, this sounds incredibly selfish, but to be able to sit, take that time for you, have a nice cup of tea, talk about yourself, because we do love talking about ourselves, don't we? For an hour or whatever, and deal with the stuff that's going on does mean that you do get it dealt with. And I think it's really important
But
that you
you're
do
right.
that before you move on and start making decisions.
I agree. It also can be a tough process, but it moves at at your pace.
Yeah.
So it can be a tough process, but nobody walks through the door and gets straight away confronted with, I don't know, something that might sound like an accusation or an inquisition. And I think the thing with therapy is that it moves at your pace, but at the end of the day, it is not just coming round to somebody's house and having a metaphorical hug and a pat on the head and a brew and saying, there you go, honey, off you go. It is about actually saying, I'm here. And in any situation, any divorce particularly, you haven't got, and it might sound tough to say this, but you haven't got a bad guy and a good guy. You've not got one person who is the devil incarnate and one person who is some sainthood person. So yeah, because remember, both of you loved each other at one point enough to get together. So whatever's gone on has been a slow disintegration, perhaps of respect, perhaps of love, perhaps of caring for each other, perhaps of interest in each other, and all those different things where we have grown up because we met when we were younger, and now our careers have taken over, and one person's into this and one person's into that, and one person's dead fit and the other isn't. And there can be all sorts of different things that are going on here. That has been a slow erosion of that relationship. Now, what needed to happen at those points? Yes, we might have been really busy, really focused on a sick child, or keeping the business afloat, or looking after relatives who were unwell and they live miles away, or a child who was off the rails. There can be all sorts of different things that distract us from our relationship, and we can leave it on slow burn for 10, 15, 20 years sometimes in some cases, and then look at each other and go, good grief, I don't like you. Who are you anyway? We were waiting for the kids to grow up before we did this, or we were waiting for the mortgage to be paid off, or for the business to be sorted. So it is a slow erosion, and that's where owning the responsibility, your part in what's happened here, it has got to be faced up to, because these are the lessons I want to take away from this relationship that's broken down, that I've invested all this love and care in. But actually, hang on a minute, when I think about it, I was party to that too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also, there's every chance you may want a relationship again in the future, and you need to heal these things before you try and move on into that as well. So I
And
do
not
think
take it into the next relationship.
sure,
That's the thing. A lot
absolutely.
of people, there's no way I'm ever going to have a relationship with somebody who behaves like this or does that or thinks about such a thing. Actually, that's completely wrong. And so going for somebody who's the exact opposite of what you had before can also be a recipe for disaster, which is why they're called rebounds. We go from one to the
Mm,
next and we rebound and think, oh, or we have a bit of buddy sex or a bit of a fun time and get used to playing the field a little bit. Okay, but at the end of the day, if you're wanting a proper relationship, an adult relationship with somebody else, it is about healing all your own stuff and realizing, actually getting to know yourself a bit better, getting to know what's negotiable for you, what's non-negotiable, what you feel good about, what you're not so bothered about, and getting all those into the right order for yourself.
yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. So if I'm sat here today watching this, listening to you talk and thinking, yep, she's really speaking to me. What are the first three things that I should think about doing?
In terms of getting back yourself sorted,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the first three things are thinking, where am I up to? Where what's actually going on here? Is the relationship finished or is it time to move on? So where am I going to live? What am I going to do? What do I need to take care of? What are my safety zone things? So do I need to be safer financially, domestic wise, where I'm located? Have I got a coterie of friends, support network around me? Where do I go from here? And also, I think it's about taking time for yourself, to be gentle with yourself and to not feel that other people's advice or support or whatever needs to propel you into doing something you don't want to do. And I think the third thing is, it is a good time to perhaps think about maybe getting some support from a therapist, like someone like myself, because I know that sometimes I work with people purely to keep them going through the process. So we're not actually doing any deep dives into patterns or whatever it might be. Literally, sometimes people turn up and they are in a exceptionally stressed state and they purely need to feel good about themselves, to de-stress, to be able to cope, to be able to go home and deal with the children or the part they can't afford to leave until the house is sold, so they're both living under the same roof. And it's about finding ways to cope with that for themselves. And that's something that I certainly can help my clients with too.
Fantastic, and I will add my very strong recommendation for Susan, because she is absolutely wonderful. If anybody would like to get in touch with you, Susan, and perhaps arrange to have a chat or come and see you for a consultation, how do they go about doing that?
My website is lifestyletherapy.net. And on there, I put lots of articles that are freely available to read. I've written 3 books. I write for a lot of magazines. So there's stuff out there about me that you can see and get lots of advice. I won't even know you've done that. So you can go and have a look on my website with pleasure. Or just phone me up for a chat, as you say, and that's absolutely fine. I'm on all the socials too. So tips of the day and all sorts of things are out there for you just to have as well, just to keep you going and to give some sunshine. Lifestyletherapy.net. Thank
Love
you.
the idea of you giving some sunshine. That's wonderful. And also, Susan is one of the professionals in our Facebook group, which is Separation, Divorce and Dissolution UK. So please feel free to check that out and become a member so that you can get all Susan's valuable advice in there as well. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure as always, and we will see you soon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.